Hi, it's Christian, welcome back. In this video we're going to have a look at foot controllers and how we can use foot controllers to take control of the MultiTrack player. Now, if you're just starting out looking at foot controllers and you're researching the market, our advice is you have a look into something like this. Now this is a great foot controller, it's nice and simple, it works via USB and it just gives you 3 buttons that you can assign any keystroke to. We recommend setting it up in the following way, that the middle button becomes your spacebar, so that's your play button, and the left and right buttons are the buttons that you would use to navigate left and right through the sections of the song. So with those 3 buttons you can arrange on the fly, you can move between different sections really easily. And remember, with the MultiTrack player, when it finishes a song it will automatically queue up the next one, so all you need to do is hit spacebar to start that one as well. But what if you wanted to go a little bit deeper, have a little bit more control at your feet, or if you had a Midi controller or a Midi foot controller that you wanted to use? All of that's very possible. However, the MultiTrack player recognises hotkeys, it recognises keystrokes from your computer keyboard, and Midi foot controllers, as the name suggests, export using Midi controls and Midi notes. So we need to get the two to talk to each other. We need to get the Midi notes to be converted to keystrokes. And it sounds very complicated, but really it's not. Let me show you how we do it. So what we need to get first is a piece of software that converts those Midi notes to keystroke. And there are some free options available, which is really great news for us. The first one, if you're using a Mac, is to use a piece of software called Midi Stroke. The link is at the bottom of the screen. Or if you're using a PC, you might want to investigate Bohm's Midi Translator. And again, the link is at the bottom of the screen. Bohm's is also available for Mac, but it's a paid for application, so it's up to you. So let me show you how to use Midi Stroke first, then I'll show you how to use Bohm's, and hopefully after that you can go and be really creative and have full control of your MultiTrack player using your feet. So let's have a look at Midi Stroke first. So this is Midi Stroke. Now Midi Stroke is free, it's quite basic in its design and the way that it looks, and it requires you to know just a little bit about your USB MIDI foot controller or your other MIDI controller to really get the best from this. But you can get all of that information either from the internet or from your own manual, or you can engage us for a little bit of help as well. So the first thing we need to do is we need to know what port our MIDI controller is using. Now I have a soft step controller here next to me which is plugged into my USB, and I know that this has created a port called soft step COM port 1. Now if you go into your Midi settings or if you get your manual out for your foot controller, it'll make it very clear what port it's using. So let me select that. Now the other thing that I need to do is I need to know what Midi notes are being exported when I press each button. Now again, I was able to find this in the manual really easily, so I know that button 1 exports Midi note number 1, and then it goes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and so on. This column here is our Midi note, so that we're going to enter the number, as it says there, the number and channel for messages, and then on the other side we're going to specify the keystrokes that are going to be triggered when the piece of software receives that message. So I'm just going to set up 4 basic controls for now just to show you how to do it, but remember you can program any of the hotkeys available for the MultiTrack player. So let's press this plus button to set up a trigger, and my first button on my foot controller is number 1. And I'm going to type in number 1. I'm going to leave the channel as number 1 because I know that I'm using MIDI channel 1, and then I'm going to put value in. And what value is basically the velocity or the pressure that you press the button. I want to set that at 127, which is the maximum setting, so that when my button is pressed, that's when it will trigger the note. Then I come to the other side of the program and I hit the plus arrow, and I now tell it what that number 1 is going to translate to. And in this case it's going to be the back arrow. So I press the back arrow on my keyboard, which is actually the comma. That's now set to move backwards in the song section. Let me add another trigger. It's going to be number 2 on 127, and this is going to be the forward arrow. And then finally I need a play button. So let's put that in as number 3 on channel 1, velocity 127. And now the play button is spacebar, but if I type space it just gives me a blank. So if I come down here, there's a button that says keystrokes. That actually tells me what all the keystrokes are, and I want space. So in here I'm going to type in the word space. And finally let's have a stop button, So let's put in button number 9 for me, because that's up in the top corner, and that's a nice emergency stop button, or a stop button at the end of the track. 1, 2, 7, great. And again, stop button shortcut is escape, so I'm going to type in the word escape. Great. MIDI stroke is now ready to go. I can save that as a preset. I can go back to the MultiTrack player, and if I hit button number 3, which is my play button, you'll see that the track starts playing. Now if I hit button number 2, that's going to, there we go, down here, selecting the next section, and I can navigate around, and I'm doing that using my foot controller. Number 1 will move back, and if I hit number 3, that's play, it's highlighted that area, and it's moved into that section. Now if I hit button number 9, the MultiTrack player stops, because that's my stop button. Really, really simple way of being able to use any MIDI foot controller just with a little bit of knowledge of what note it's exporting and be able to set it up. And again, you could set any button on your foot controller to any one of these short keys. So I could have a button set up for soloing or muting the drums. I could have a button set up for changing the tempo or the key or whatever you want to do. You can really arrange it. It really is that simple. So I use the Soft Step controller by Keith McMillan. There's a picture of it here, and you can see that I've got 2 banks of 5 buttons. 5 on the bottom, 5 on the top. And then using the arrow keys I can go to multiple banks if I want to. But actually I can control everything that I need to on the player just using those 10 available buttons and having them set up. So let me show you how I do that. What I've effectively done is using the same method that we've just shown you is I map a keystroke to each one of those 10 buttons. And it looks like this. Button number 1 is my back button, so it moves backwards through the arrangement. Button number 2 is my play or my space bar or my loop section button. And button number 3 is my forward button. So most of the time I can use just those 3 buttons, back, play and forward, to have complete control over the arrangement. Remember that when you finish a song in the MultiTrack player, it automatically queues up the next song anyway, so I don't need to have the control to move forward and back in the songs in my set list. I just literally need to play forward and back within the arrangement. Then I've added on buttons 9 and button 4 the ability to go up and down in tempo, so if I need to go a little bit faster I can press the up button, or slower press the down button. And likewise on keys number 5 and keys number 0 I've done key up and key down. So again, if I wanted to change key or if I want to go up and down, I can do that really easily, either when I'm arranging on the fly, or if I decide in practice that I just need to lower it a little bit, I can do that there as well. And then buttons 6, 7 and 8 are various solos of various instruments. So on button number 6 I've got it to solo the acoustic guitar, so really helpful if I want to change the feel of the song, maybe drop it down to just an acoustic guitar. I can press button number 6 and then I can use my guitar just to add some texture or finger pick or something else on top of that structure. Button number 7 will solo just the keys parts on keys 1 and 2. So again, really nice if I want to change the feel, depending on the song, that might be dropping down to piano based or more keys based or more pad based, I can do that. And then button number 8 actually solos 2 instruments again, it solos the drums and the bass. So really great if at the end of a chorus I want to repeat the chorus and maybe just go into a drum and bass only chorus. I can press that button and it will just solo those 2 instruments. And then with 6, 7 and 8, those buttons, as soon as I press the button again, it will on-solo and bring it back in the rest of the band. So just a really nice feature and a nice way that I, again, can just add some texture and change my instrumentation as I'm leading worship. Okay, let me show you how you can do exactly the same using a piece of software called Bohm's Midi Translator. So let me close down Midi Stroke, just so we don't confuse my computer, and open up Bohm's. Now, this is Bohm's on a Mac. It will look slightly different on a PC, but the functionality is still the same. So the first thing we do is we open up this new preset. We can call that our MultiTrack player or foot controller, whatever we want to do. And then we click this button here to set up a new translator. Now, this works in a similar way. We give it a name, we tell it what to look for on its way in and what to look for on its way out. Now, Bohm's is very clever because it gives us an event monitor, so when I press the button you can see that this light flashes to say that there is MIDI coming in, so that's really helpful. But it's also got this little wizard over here that learns the MIDI notes for us, so we don't even need to know which MIDI notes are exporting from our controller. All I simply do is click Capture MIDI and I press the button that I want to map, and here it's giving me 2 options. And then if we click on them, it tells me what's going on. So this is a note on channel 1, and it's note number 1, that's great, and it's velocity 127. Okay, and what's the other one? The other one is the same, but with no velocity. So we want this MIDI note to take place when I press the button, not when I release the button. So we want it with that velocity. Great. Then I scroll down to what's called outgoing, and down here there's lots of options, and you want to choose keystroke. And in keystroke, you can assign that MIDI note a specific key function. So again, it's going to be comma for my back button or my arrow button. Great. Let me set up another one very quickly. Capture MIDI. Press my button, that's the one that I want, and I want to keystroke that to my forward button. There we go. Next, capture MIDI, button number 3 is going to be my play button. I want the velocity on, keystroke, and if I click in there and hit space, it will actually type in space, which is great. And let's have a stop button as well. So let's go capture MIDI. There we go, there's 09, which is number 9, and I want keystroke, MIDI stroke, escape. Now remember, you can set up any of the shortcuts and the hotkeys that are available. So it doesn't have to be just these 4, you could have 10, you could have 15, you could have 20, you can have whatever you need. So I could have a whole nother bank that when I hit the next bank, that could be all my soloing and muting. My next bank could be all of my key changes or whatever. Endless possibilities. Let me go back to the MultiTrack player. Now, you have to make this screen the active screen. It has to be the screen that the notes will actually be typed into. That's the same for both players. But again, if I hit number 3 and click in here, there we go.
4 bars.
I hadn't made it active to begin with, so I click in there. My player's now active. I'm ready to go. I can now use the same buttons to move forward and back using my foot controller, trigger them off, and hit stop button as well. And I've got full control of Worship Backing Band's Pro Wav multi-track player using my feet. If you have any more questions, please get in touch with us. There is some Skype training available if you need a little bit more help in configuring your controller, we can do that as well. But with just a little bit of knowledge of your foot controller and one of these 2 free pieces of software, you can have complete control and you can be really creative in the way that you use the multi-track player. God bless and take care.